Hello, and welcome to Can Do Teaching. Each episode, we invite expert staff from Canterbury Elementary School in Crystal Lake, Illinois, to share tips, tricks, and a few laughs in support of all of our listeners. Together, we can do this. Hello, this is Stacy Graff. Thank you for joining us on our podcast today. We are going to be talking about running records today, and we have a couple of our in-house experts. If you want to introduce yourselves.
I'm Heidi Marchetti, and I'm one of the reading specialists here at Canterbury.
And I'm Denise Alejandro, bilingual interventionist.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. I'm very excited to have you. I know running records may sound like a topic that not everybody is super excited to hear about, but I know it's a big part of what you do and what all of us need to be doing to support our kids. So we're going to talk about a couple things today. We're going to talk about like the big pictures of why we want to do running records, as well as how to do them in a way that makes sense and gives us the information we need from running records. But before we dig into that, I know as a teacher, when I was first told back in the day, probably before you were even born, Denise, when I was first told that I was going to be doing running records, it was really nerve-wracking for me. It was really difficult for me to kind of learn the system and what's the importance of doing it and how is this helpful for me. But then after using it for a while, I kind of saw the benefits and how it could really help me as a teacher. Do you guys have any personal stories like that kind of made you buy into the running records?
Sure. I think that we all know how foundational reading is for kids. And so success in school is really, the foundation for that is reading. And we probably have all had those students who identify themselves as struggling readers or striving readers, kids who are not reading yet. And I remember so vividly having a student in third grade, and we were reading about Helen Keller and how Helen Keller had this breakthrough because a teacher figured out how to teach Helen Keller so she could learn. And he wrote a response in third grade and said, "This reminds me when I was in first grade and I couldn't read, but a teacher helped me." And now here he was responding and making this great connection to a biography of Helen Keller. And he saw himself as a reader and a writer. And I didn't know that this student had struggled in first grade. But what I do know now is that the reason that teacher was able to help that student learn to read is because of using a formative assessment, running records, to find out exactly what that student needed. And so my experience is when we use them to inform our instruction, it really makes a big difference for kids.
That's such a great story. And that's like the reward that every teacher wants to have, that's the moment that we hold on to as teachers. You kind of referenced a little bit about the purpose and why we want to do running records. Denise, do you want to follow up on that and tell us a little bit more about why? Why do we need to do running records with our kids?
Sure. The first point would be, the running record is the purpose of a running record is to give us a snapshot of our child's reading behaviors, right? It provides us an opportunity for the child to demonstrate what he knows, right? Seek to understand why the student is doing what he's doing. And it helps us also determine a student's instructional reading level.
Wonderful. Heidi, do you want to add anything to that?
I think that the running record also gives us a mirror for us to reflect on our own teaching. So not only does it show us what the students know, we can see by what the students may be neglecting what we need to teach next. Perhaps we have not taught to one specific strategy, and so it helps not only the student, but it informs our teaching, helps us know where some kids need to go next.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the why behind doing a running record is really for us to learn about that student's strengths and areas that they may need to work on as a reader, but then also our strengths and areas that we need to work on as a reading instructor. Is that what we're shooting for here?
Yes, it's one of like teaching points, right?
I love that. And I know when we talked about this previously, one of you used the phrase like, what are the reading behaviors we need to honor in a student? Can you talk about that a little bit more and what that means?
Sure. Honoring their language, right? Like learn more about the structures of the students' native language. Also learning about what like the connection between, I mean, we're in a dual language program, right? So it's like, what are they borrowing from the other language? What are they using? What structures? Why are we dropping, the inflectional endings, and also like just avoid overemphasizing on that visual system, like not being so hard and, maybe picky.
Yeah. That makes total sense, because whether it's a second language or whether it's an articulation problem or concern or something that a student's working on, those are all things that we need to take into consideration when we're doing a running record. And to be able to use it, we talk about in our dual language program a lot about having it be additive, right? That we want to think about what do they know in each language, and when you put that together, it adds up to like a great deal of knowledge and a really diverse background. And this is kind of the same way, like this is additive. What do kids already know? What can they already do? And let's honor those behaviors and show them that those are valued so that they maintain those as we continue to add to their so-called toolkit. So I kind of get the picture of why, but then there's always the question of how. Like we can all philosophically agree, like this sounds great and this is what all of us dream of doing. Like if we had all day, every day with a small number of students, this would be a beautiful dream, like to spend time with kids doing this. But how do you do this? How do you get these things done?
So I think it's really developing a system that works for you in your classroom, and it probably is going to look different at the primary level and the intermediate level. The primary level, we are going to be emphasizing accuracy, but not only accuracy. So it's also about analyzing what students do when they are making an error or when they go back to self-correct, and also that piece of comprehension and fluency. What does the reading sound like? And so at the primary levels, if you can set up yourself with a system to take one running record after or within each reading group. So as students are doing familiar rereads, you can be doing that running record. And at the intermediate level, if you know your kids are mostly accurate, you can be focusing on that comprehension conversation. And that doesn't always have to be one-on-one. You can be taking those notes, asking those questions about the text, within the text, beyond the text, within a conversation, and noting what understandings individual students have. So your reading team is really happy to help you with those kinds of systems. And so I took the running record, now what do I do with it?
Right.
But I think that the more comfortable you get with it, the easier it will be. So sometimes you just have to kind of take the leap.
And it's always nice to have more than one running record, right? Because you could analyze and see what kind of language or language that they have, that.
And you made me think about this, Denise, because we do our dual language program in our building. However, we also have many multilingual learners in our classrooms, regardless of which program they're in. And we really want to talk about like that. The running record's not a test.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a you failed it, or it informs your instruction. And you always want to when you're doing running records with kids, start with a praise point. What's something the child did that they did really well, and then one teaching point. And so being able to look at that, and then over time also making sure that you are not just giving one running record. If it comes out instructional, stopping, because students may be instructional across levels depending on their background knowledge,
right,
and their oral language structures.
So Heidi, you just kind of referenced this, but one of the things that's really difficult for teachers is to know when to move a student up. And you talked about instructional across various levels, but can you talk about, especially when they get those older grades and it's comprehension conversations, like how do you know when it's okay to move a student up?
So I've been that teacher, right? You're afraid, you want to hang on to them, like maybe they're not ready. But remember, you can move up and you can move back down if you need to. But we always want to give opportunities to kids to be reading at their cutting edge of learning. And so we don't want to hold on to kids in certain levels because we run out of things to teach in that level. And so the running record's going to help you if that accuracy is high and you've got that basic comprehension, then go ahead and try that next level. And if it might still be instructional there, or getting past, getting to that easy level. So again, it's not a test. It's not designed to hold. It's more to inform your instruction and to know what the child is capable of doing. But we always want to be giving kids the opportunity to be instructed at that highest level. So we want to go to that hard, and then you'll know. And it also might depend on the text. So is it an informational text? Is it background? Is it the child's background knowledge? But the running record can help you, or the running records, we probably don't want to do it just on one, will help you make those instructional decisions to do what's best for kids.
But also, like for our ELL, for our English language learners, we do want to give them time, right? We also want to think about, let's not hold them back because they might have, not have the language, right? Thinking about their oral language development, considering
those can-dos, really, like also thinking about those and how they apply to the situation. I also, just to add on, Denise, I'm sorry to cut you off, but just to add on to that, like I think about all of our kids, and Heidi kind of referenced, one book at a level or one text at a level might be very accessible to them because it's something they know about.
Yes.
And it fits with their background knowledge. And
Absolutely.
Another text at that same level may be completely foreign to them where they don't have any exposure to that. So it's really important not to let one text really make or break a student. It's to really try to challenge them. I had a teacher for one of my daughters once who said, stick with the struggle. That was her phrase that she would always say. And I think that's key. We need to challenge our kids to the best of their ability. We want them right at that edge of where they're being challenged, but not reaching frustration, and giving them the skills that they need to overcome those challenges so that they can feel the reward of doing hard things.
And we ask our kids to take those risks all the time. So we as teachers have to take those risks for kids as well. And you might do that next book and it might be a disaster. That doesn't mean you didn't make the right decision.
But it's also good to give them that exposure, right, to those new texts or that, the next level. And giving them time. And once again, it's like not holding or not emphasizing either a mispronouncing a word or that the drop of inflectional endings. Like we're not holding them back.
Yeah, and you and I have had that conversation. What it tells you is if you're noticing that in your running record, you don't want to hold that. You might be ready to move up to the next level, but then that mirror in your own teaching is you're going to have to be more supportive of those language structures. So if you're noticing that the child is making a lot of errors because of structure, because perhaps they're using the structure of the first language instead of the second, then that tells you that that's where your teaching needs to go. So, or if it's only visual information and they're not thinking about the story, that tells you what the child is using and neglecting. So it's so useful for all of our learners and especially our multilingual learners as well.
Well, and that's just so valuable because really no matter what happens when you're taking a running record, you're learning something. You're
Right.
learning about yourself and you're learning about the student. So that's going to guide you as you move forward.
Yes.
You've had some great tips today, ladies. Thank you so much. What does our staff have to look forward to?
So our reading team is working to put together a short slideshow with all this information and a little bit more to support you. And remember, we are here for you. So this will be a resource with, it'll be a narrated slideshow. And then after you watch that, or if you want to dive in deeper about running records with our reading staff, and of course we have wonderful coaches as well, we are here because we all want what's best for kids.
And is there one specific resource that you would say is the primary resource that teachers, like if they're planning for their guided reading groups, this is the one resource?
Your Bible.
Yeah.
Your Jan Richardson.
Okay.
The Jan Richardson book, for sure.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing your expertise. It was fun getting to talk to you, and I look forward to hearing more about this as we move forward in our school year.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.